Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a drink. It is time for a bit of a live stream discussion. We are going to be talking today about the patch notes, patch 3.270C, which I think Grindy Gear Games are pushing now, assuming that nothing goes wrong. Because as we all know, something often does go wrong. I am multi-streaming this. I am streaming this to both YouTube and Twitch, and you can just watch it on whichever platform you prefer. There is a promo, however, if you're watching on Twitch while this is live. This is not going to apply if you're watching after the fact. One more thing, if you are watching this on YouTube and you happen to have joined late, you can change the speed on YouTube, which is something I really like. You can jump it up to 175% if that ends up being followable, or even 150%. Just so that you can catch up. You can even go as high as 200% if you can follow what I'm saying when I end up being digitally altered to talk about as fast as Eminem does. Anyways, we are going to be talking through these patch notes. I believe this patch is being pushed live as we speak, but it is always my advice. Let other people be the guinea pigs. Let other people log in first. So if it does turn out that this is the patch going live right now and you're watching this while it's brand new, then give it 30 minutes just to see if Reddit is on fire. Sometimes there have been very, very serious problems that come up when the patch actually initially goes live. I don't think that's going to be the case here. It's not like they're making changes that directly affect characters, but give it a bit of a sec there. Now, let's go through some of the changes that are being made here. Firstly, though, let's talk about the nasty one. And this is something that's a bug fix. Sometimes there is a bug that people think is a feature. In 3.27.0, they added in the map device rucksack, as people have been calling it. And this is a device next to your map device that you can store a bunch of maps that are already enrolled in. However, actually, maybe that was 326. Anyways, it's been added reasonably recently. It's been discovered in 327 that you could use that you could use scouring orbs, alchemy orbs, and Val orbs in that on strongboxes that are found inside maps and also on essence monsters that are found inside maps. Well, that was not working as intended. This is actually going to be rolled back here. I think this is Grindy Gear Games being overly cautious, but it is probably the right choice they're making here. This is the sort of thing that should be a feature. It's a sort of thing that should be a feature, but if it's introduced as a bug, then there's a potential that something goes very, very wrong with it. And that is the real problem. And that's why I think they're reverting it for now. I do think this should come back once it's been tested because people did like it for very good reason. It just made things feel smoother. One of the things that was known to be an obnoxious bug with that was that when you were trying to make items, when you were trying to do certain vendor trades, it would use currency from your map device rucksack first over in higher preference than your actual currency tab. And that was often not a desired behavior. Anyways, let's go through the changes that are being made, starting with the things that are being made to the Keepers League itself. And then after that, we'll have the Scarab changes, which relate to endgame juicing. And then after that, there'll be the bug fixes, which has both that nasty thing we already talked about, but a bunch of other things as well. Firstly, they're adding over 80 Foulborn unique items to discover. Now, 7 of these were teased yesterday, of which Replica Sybil's Paw was very good. Replica Headhunter was obviously very good. And no, I'm calling them replicas here. Let's just call them replicas. Replica Sybil's Paw, Replica Headhunter were very good. And there were a couple of others that were more niche and a couple of others that were more marginal. Anyways, there's going to be dozens more of them. Chances are a couple of these are really good. Chances are a lot of them are not. And it'll be interesting to find them out. One thing that's very important though, there is going to be overwhelming demand for any of these that turn out to be good early on. And there is going to be negligible supply. This happens every time Grindy Gear Games add a new unique item in the middle of a league. Or for that matter, new consumables actually are even more so with this. When they added all the new Scarabs in patch 3.24, I think it was 3.24.2 that they did that in, that ended up causing an enormous rush to get these new Scarabs. And actually, few of them ended up being all that good early on. Some of them people found uses for later, but they were very expensive early on. And yeah, people are commenting in YouTube chat that there's been Horned Scarab of Nemesis panic buying going on. And I think that's very, very real. That Scarab's getting a lot better in this. So anyways, and to keep this one in mind, that some of these are going to be very expensive early on and they're going to crater in price. If you're someone who has hundreds of divines to throw around, then yeah, throw 20 of them. at getting one of the new versions of the Foulborn uniques. But if you're not someone that's got hundreds of vines to throw around, then, well, just wait. They'll come down in price as more of them get created. And if it turns out that one or two of them are really, really rare and really chase, then those ones will start getting targeted more with the Genesis tree. Okay, so let's go through some of the other things that are being changed explicitly. We have buffs to the amount of Graft Blood and Womb Gifts that are coming from Breach Hive encounters. Hive encounters are the annoying ones where Ilith has to be defended. These buffs are most prominent in higher level areas. 50% buff in level 83 maps. Hive Fortresses grant up to 25% more Graft Blood in level 83 maps, and they already granted a lot. So this means that you'll be able to use the Genesis tree quite a bit more often. Fortresses granting Graft Blood is just listed twice in the patch notes, so I think that's a typo. I don't think the intention here is that this is 2 stacking 25% more multipliers for an overall 56.25%. I think it is just 1. And then after this, we have growing womb gifts now require 40% less Graft Blood to grow on the Genesis tree. So these now are going to be, you're going to be gaining 50% more Graft Blood. This means essentially 150% more access to growing womb gifts if you are gated by the amount of Graft Blood that you can get. If instead you're gated by the amount of womb gifts you've got, then this is not going to be much of a change here at all. After this, we have the number of monster packs that spawn each wave in Hive encounters. This is now 80% more packs in level 83 maps. Now, some people are reading this as stacking multiplicatively in rewards with this line here. This is not my reading. My reading, 80% more risk, 50% more reward. Some people's reading, though, is 80% more risk, 50% more reward per monster, multiplying together for a total of 170% more reward. We'll see. It'll be very obvious which of these two interpretations is true once we get to play with it. But my expectation here is that in the past, you're killing 100 monsters and getting the rewards for 150 of them. Oh, sorry, you're killing 100 monsters, getting the rewards for 100. My interpretation is now you kill 180, you get the rewards for 150. But also the generic loot drops should actually scale up by 80% in level 83 maps. Also, not sure how this is going to apply in tier 17s either. So level 84 zones might be slightly higher, or they might be the same as 83s. Breakable Hive pack spawners. These are getting quite a number of boosts. So these are those grey dots that appear on those Hive maps. And when you run over them, they turn purple. These then cause monsters to spawn. There's going to be 40% more of these, and they're going to start chain reacting now. So this is going to be really, really significant here. And that's going to be something that the chain reactions are going to be the biggest thing with those. So we'll come to that in a sec. But there are more of these. Increase the number of breach monster packs that are spawned within a breach hive. And so that's the default number. On top of that, you also have these pack spawners there. Slightly increase the number of skill objects granted by Aelith in breach hive encounters in maps. This is probably neither here nor there. I think you get 3 at the moment, so I'm assuming that's going from 3 to 4. These skill objects are probably more important now because a lot of these changes are going to make it harder for people who start the league late. So they get to tier 16 maps and they've got a weak character when they get there, and they're going to find that now they're facing tier 16 encounters that are designed for characters that are stronger than they are. Well, this is going to then give them a way to recover. Graft Blood is coming up now. Is going to be awarded from slaying the Breach Lord bosses. This is something people had done a lot of pre-patch speculation on. There was a lot of purchasing of Hivebrain glands, and people had bought an enormous amount of them. These are now going to be more lucrative. We don't know how lucrative. It might be that slaying it that was Ash and it that was Tull is a terrible use of your time still, or it might be that it's a little bit better. In Breach Hive encounters, this is the big one. Chain reactions. Touching one of these burnable hive pack spawners is now going to release a purple flame, destroying all walls within a 7.5 meter radius. That's most of a screen, so that's a lot. This can chain react if it hits another spawner object, and that will then also explode, releasing additional waves. This is going to make it faster to start the juicier versions of these encounters, and it's also, I think, going to be a lot better in tightly constrained maps. So my initial intuition on this, although we've got to test it in practice, Toxic Sewer breaches go from derisory to mediocre with this, maybe even from mediocre to good. We shall find that one out there. After this, we are getting here the variety of obstructions, the center of Hive Fortress encounters to channel monster paths. Really hope that these are destroyable. because if you don't need them, these are going to be in the way. But this is there because what grinding gear games are doing is making it so that the breach mechanic is harder. It is juicier and harder, and that is going to hurt people that join the league late. So this is intended as a way to sort of mitigate that. If we can destroy these, then this is going to be great. You invented 5 womb gifts to receive a random one in return, and the Genesis tree will now show a confirmation prompt if you have pending changes when closing it. Very minor changes after that. Well, I guess item filters is a big thing. Now, people are saying in chat that now the patch is completely live. The major page is live and people are able to play. I still want to reiterate that advice from earlier. Give it 15 minutes just in case there's some massive, massive, monstrous technical issues with it. And if Reddit is on fire, then don't play for now. If Reddit is not on fire at that point, then log in. That's always the thing they're going to do. Okay, now we come to the things that relate to endgame juicing. What I like here is that they're trying to buff a number of things that were not previously good. And we'll see whether they get the balance on this right, because sometimes you can get things quite wrong here. And sometimes you can end up creating a new monstrosity of an overpowered strategy. They had a lot of problems with that in Necropolis League, where they would buff something and they would buff it so far past everything else that, well, Necropolis League, for all people didn't really like it very much, it was the highest loot that the game has ever had in a normal league. And not even close. Like, Affliction was probably 80% less loot than Necropolis. Necropolis was absolutely off the charts. There were maps that people were running that were dropping more than 20,000 unique items, whereas for comparison, the highest I know of in 327, the highest farms was like 700 or 800. So yeah, that's definitely there. Apparently someone in chat is saying there is a Foulborn Mage Blood, and I'm kind of curious whether this is just rightmost. If it's rightmost flasks, that's going to be really funny, but I guess we'll see all the new unique items once they're actually in a more confirmed state, rather than once it's just people memeing about them at the moment. But yeah, we'll find out the exact details there. In fact, I might just have a quick look over on the Path of Exile subreddit and in my second window just to see what exactly they have decided to do when it comes to Foulborn Mage Blood, because I assume it will be the top post by new. They actually did it. Okay, someone has a rightmost utility flasks Mage Blood listed, and it does look like a legitimate screenshot. It doesn't look like a meme. I haven't verified whether it's available on there. So yeah, that's kind of funny there. So they did it. Yeah, they actually did it. So that's essentially just a Mage Blood, but it's just a way to get Mage Blood out of the league mechanic, which is the goal there. Okay, so let's go through the Scarab changes. Firstly, Scarab of Divinity. I want to point out that this pairs with Horn Scarab of Nemesis as well. Scarab of Divinity has a limit of 3 up from 2 and now causes up to 3 additional rare monsters in the area to be Pantheon touched instead of 2. So if you want to go all in on this, this is going to allow you to add 9 Pantheon touched rare monsters to your map. However, those Pantheon apparitions are going to be lethal. Pantheon apparitions are pretty dangerous anyway, and they're not something you're used to fighting because they're pretty rare. But having Arakali come and just delete you in a map is going to be more common in conjunction with this. I might just bring up the actual Scarab in question here, because we're dealing with a Scarab that I think even a lot of veteran players just aren't that familiar with, because it is not a very popular... historically was not a very popular Scarab. So here's the Scarab of Divinity as it existed day 1 of 3.27. Up to 2 additional rare monsters in the area will be Pantheon touched, i.e. Brine King touched, Lunara's touched, Solaris touched, or whatever. These have tremendously enhanced base loot, these Pantheon touched monsters, and they're also very, very likely to have a rare monster conversion. Rare monster conversion mods are sometimes positive, sometimes negative. An example of a negative one is all items this monster drops are corrupted. An example of a positive one is all items this monster drops are fractured. Or another example is all items that this monster drops are replaced by the highest level requirement crafting base that you could get. So for instance, if you would have had a Necromancer Silks drop as a rare item, you would instead get a Twilight Regalia if the monster is capable of dropping IA-84 loot. Another one of them that is probably most notable is every single item that this monster drops is maximum socketed, and another one, every single item is maximum linked. Now, if you get the absolute stars aligned in a league that is not called Keepers of the Flame League, then the stars aligned is that you get the Twilight Regalia upgrade and the 6 socket and the 6 link upgrades all on the same pack. And then you can end up getting a really big boost, like a really big infusion of big loot. That's something that comes up a bit with Scarab of Divinity farming in the past, but not enough to matter. Nowadays, we will see exactly how that works out. But the key thing here is that Horn Scarab of Nemesis. So let's bring that one up. This is going to be really good now, because this is something that stacks very well with itself. And now you're going to be able to use 2. The other thing to note, Horn Scarab of Nemesis is the only Scarab that is a Horn Scarab that is not the same rarity as, like, that's not extremely high rarity. As far as we know, there are 5 rarity tiers for Scarabs: common, uncommon, and rare, and this is like 300 to 200 to 100 drop rate. Then we have Mythic Rare, which is drop rate of 10, that's most of the Horn Scarabs. And then there is Extreme, which is a drop rate of 1. Horn Scarab of Preservation is definitely Extreme, and there's some speculation a couple of the others might be. Anyways, Horn Scarab of Nemesis is in that drop rate 100 category, we believe, and we think it is this 300, 200, 100, 10, 1, based on pretty large sample sizes. The only thing that's up in the air is whether it is exactly 10 and whether it's exactly 1. So it might be like it's 1.1 or it might be 0.9. And it might be that instead of 10, it's 12. There's some weak evidence of that. All of that said, the Horn Scarab of Nemesis is something like 10 times as common as all of the other Horn Scarabs. And unless that changes with patch 3.27.0c, this is going to be something that's used quite a bit. I have loved this Scarab when I've farmed with it in the past. It's definitely a favorite. Titanic Scarab of Legend. This now causes monsters in the area, unique monsters, to have 4 additional modifiers instead of 2. This is going to get a lot of people into very, very dangerous situations. So the monster modifiers are something that are a multiplier to danger, and unique monsters can end up going really, really silly, especially Unraveling Horror. I think Port Map is going to be really interesting to see what happens here. Want to see exactly where this one ends up going. So, All Flame Ember of Propagation. I might just bring this one up because it's one not many people have played around with. This is going to see quite a bit more use now. I feel like Grinding Gear Games intended this one to be one of the more special ones. The player base love the gold one, the player base love the ethereal one, but I think they intended Propagation to be one of the special ones. When you spawn rare monster packs with this, they're going to grant their monster modifiers randomly to other rare monsters in the area on death. And there's a lot of rare monsters that get added with this. Now it's going to replace 50% more packs as well. Because this one only drops from Katarina, it's a little bit of an extra reward for running Katarina. I'm going to see what's going on there, but that should be really, really... like, this is going to be one of those things that either it's going to be explosive juice, or it's just going to still miss. I'm not sure which of the two it'll be, but this is going to be way, way more significant than it was before. Now we have the ones that are really hard to quantify, and I'm going to jump these two together. Legion monsters broken out in areas affected by Legion Scarab of Eternal Conflict, and monsters from Abysses in areas affected by Abyss Scarab of Profound Depth. These now have approximately 30% higher reward for each time that the thing's gone off. This is one of those mechanics that the game doesn't really explain at all. All we know is that it's strong. So the mechanic in question, increased reward, is never defined anywhere. It is something that you encounter on Mariketh, not Mariketh emblems, just unrelenting emblems. Unrelenting Timeless emblems. These are going to be... Unrelenting Timeless emblems are going to be really, really, really substantial with the extra 10%. Sorry, with the... yeah, where's I going with that? Sorry, this is a drawback to doing things live. If I was doing this recorded, I would have cut that one out. The Unrelenting emblems have 10% of this stat. There is also more of this stat found on Ritual Vessels, and if you ever have run 4 or 5 Ritual Vessel maps, you'll find that the loot in them is biased towards quite good things. We don't know exactly how it works. This is the same mechanic, increased reward. We don't know exactly what it does. My intuition is that it causes loot to bias towards rarer outcomes. Now, a while ago, it was data mined a bunch of drop rates of different pools of loot. And the rarest item category was Sanctum Tomes at the time. Second rarest was Heist Blueprints. And then there was a bunch of other categories that were more common than that. So you'd have, as an example, like currency is actually pretty common, but weapons and armor are the most common of the categories. And then gloves, shields, things like that. This information can't be data mined anymore, but the data mine info was saved by people. And my intuition of how this increased reward works is it causes loot to bias towards those item categories that are rarest. So you'll get more Sanctum Tomes. That was my intuition from running Abyss, Scarab, or Profound Depth farms in the past. It felt really incredible back when Sanctum Tomes would loot, but Sanctum Tomes nowadays aren't really loot. So it fell off quite a bit. That said, I did get a fair number of raw divine orbs from doing this farm in the past. So we'll see there exactly how it works. This has felt strong in the past, Abyss, Scarab, or Profound Depth, but never as explosively strong as the what do you call it? The other thing that's somewhat similar. Oh, the Abyss, Scarab of Edifice last league, when that was broken. That was just much better, but Profound Depth did definitely feel strong. The other thing that's worth mentioning here is that generic drop anywhere loot feels worse in this patch because of asynchronous trade. And that's because there's a limit to the amount of certain items that are wanted, and that limit is filled faster because asynchronous trade means that there's not a big pool of them that are offline at any given time. And this is going to be a problem grinding gear games are going to have to deal with. Like Chris Wilson always said that asynchronous trade would cause a lot of problems. It did cause a lot of problems in Diablo 3, and it'll be interesting to see exactly what they do there. Generic loot that drops from any monster in the game has been devalued across the board. And also a bunch of other things that are just things that are really easily farmed. That's something that's that's definitely complex there to work out how it's going to work. Questions come up on YouTube chat there, which is how Titanic Scarab of Legend works with a bunch of other things, specifically Blighted Bosses, Blightheart, and the like. I am not sure because I know there are a number of changes to Titanic Scarabs in 3.27, and I haven't used any of them since the changes. So that's something you just have to test. I reckon it's go and test one map with it, and you'll be able to find out whether it works on the Blighted Bosses or not. If it does work on Blighted Bosses, then it's going to be very hard to complete those maps. 4 additional modifiers is huge. So we'll see exactly where that goes. Torment Scarab of Possession. This is now... They're trying to make it so that Torment juicing is a thing again. Torment has never been in a healthy state. There were times when it was the best thing to do in the game, the vacuum farming in particular. There were times when it was a chore you had to do every map, top-end juicing. Back in the period where you would go and take ghosts for a walk through maps, and oh, that was terrible. And now they're just trying to make it so they find a balanced spot for it. So Torment Scarab of Possession is now getting a limit of 3 instead of 4. But it's going to cause rare monsters in the area to have a quarter chance to be possessed by 3 tormented spirits instead of 1. The wording on this is very careful. They don't want this to double stack. So they want to make it so that if you use 3 of these, only one of the quarter chance or the 3 spirit stacks. They don't want it to have a situation where both of them stack. Because if you do that, you end up with a Divination Scarab of the Cloister type environment where you can't mix and match these with other Scarabs. You have to just go all in on them. That's the issue with Div Scarab of the Cloister and its quadratic scaling. So they're dealing with that there. As I mentioned to people there, it was that... who was saying there might be a hotfix coming because breaches are not dropping gifts in tier 16s at the moment. So yeah, I think that's going to be something, like I said earlier on, don't rely on the patch working the instant it comes up. Wait and see if the server is on fire or not, and then work it out. This will all be fixed. If you're watching this after the fact, it'll all be fixed. Torment Scarab now has Tormented Spirits in area have a 50% chance to be set free when the monster is slain, up from 25%. So again, they're just trying to make it so that Torment has more things going for it. This is also going to make it much, much, much easier to do that Rogue Exile that is triple ghosted challenge. So what you're going to want to do for that is run with these two Scarabs and just get some rare monsters to spawn in the final room of the, what's the name of that map? Precinct map. Precinct map, get a bunch of monsters that are rare to just drag them to that final room and then release their ghost there. Now, Horn Scarab of Nemesis, we discussed already. This thing is hugely buffed by, like having a limit of 1 was really constraining it. This thing is amazing now. This thing was already good, but it's going from good to amazing, and this definitely stacks well with itself. You could use this in conjunction with 3 Scarab of Divinity, or you could use it in conjunction with different farms. Something very important to note is that this is extremely, extremely dangerous if you use it in conjunction with a Shaper-influenced Tier 17 map mod. There is an explicit modifier that rolls on Tier 17 maps that is rare monsters in this area are Shaper touched. This mod is very, very dangerous. If people are feeling particularly horrible, you could even farm beasts that have all of these additional mods on them, and then you could go and sell them on asynchronous trade. Please don't do this. It is not very rude. It is very rude. After this, Horn Scarab of Bloodlines. This was already one of the best Scarabs in the game. It is now going to cause magic monsters in the area to have an additional modifier. So, I feel like they're setting this up to be raised in rarity from Mythic Rare to Extreme Rarity. We shall see exactly what they do. This is going to make gold farming explosively better because +1 additional modifier is absolutely off the charts good. There was some suspicion that Horn Scarab of Bloodlines was made rarer in the middle of last league. No one was able to verify that that was true. A lot of people were reporting it, but the tests that were done indicated it wasn't true. But nowadays, it might be the case. Ground Games did change it so that requesting Horn Scarab of Bloodlines in trade was costing 500 gold instead of 350. 350 is what it normally requests to request a Mythic Rarity Scarab off someone. So if you check Kalguran's Scarab of Refinement, I think it's called, the one that causes you to get completed bars instead of ore, that one's Mythic Rarity, and I think it's 350 gold to request. But Horn Scarab of Bloodlines, at some point last league, went from 350 to 500. And Horn Scarab of Preservation definitely is 500. We shall find out here. Beyond Scarab of Hemophilia now grants... This one's interesting. Characters that kill beyond rare monsters in area have a 30% chance to grant their modifiers for 20 seconds. This is in addition to previous behavior. This is a bad Scarab. This is going to be a fun Scarab now, though. This is something where they've gone, all right, no one likes this Scarab. It's not providing any real loot. So let's make it do something that is just silly and fun. This is the Merging Radius Scarab. And it's just going to give you the ability to get some effect that's like Headhunter. You can use 2 of these, so you're going to end up with 60% chance to gain the modifiers. It's only 20 seconds, not 60, but it's still going to be a lot of fun. Honestly, this is the thing to throw in the map device when you're doing yellow maps. Do this while you're just getting started, especially if you've got a Beyond Atlas, which you probably don't when you're getting started. But anyway, it's there. People in chat are reporting getting 2,000 blood from the boss from the Esh and Tull bosses, which means that the people who went hard buying every Hyperang land on the market, they are not going to get a big payoff from that. It's a small bonus for fighting them, not a massive one. Really, the big thing you get from those is just having the 7 chests in there as well. I think that's the one that's really strong. Okay, now in terms of the other changes that we've got here in the general improvement section, we've gone through all the Scarab stuff. Unique items added to the core game in 327 can now be selected for Void Key and Veldo Puzzle Box submissions if you have any of those. Stackable items will no longer be merged into existing item stacks when control-clicking items into market stash tabs. I haven't used the market stash tabs to sell any stackable items, but this is definitely a huge improvement. You don't want these to be merging together. You do not want these to be merging together. Fix a bug where avoidance and attributes crafting recipe was missing from the Maelstrom of Chaos. Oh, great. I'm going to have to go and run Maelstrom of Chaos again. And we have a couple of little monster things. So, massive nerf to Draconarius Wilhelm, who I think this is... this isn't a Rogue Exile, is it? I think this is one of the Warband bosses. Fire Warband bosses. I could be wrong on that. Anyways, this monster is taking a nerf that would make a Volcanic Fissure of Snaking Enjoyer shudder with pain. This is 45% less damage. Forest Warrior's Cyclone damage now is getting 37.5%, and Lightning Arrow on monsters is also getting 37.5%. So, lots and lots of things here. Interestingly, more reports on the bosses, the Eshental bosses, people getting 3.5 thousand blood from it, which is still pretty mid in my opinion, but it means that this is a bonus. You do the fight to unlock the Ascendancy, you do the fight for the other loot, and the blood is just a little bit of a bonus there. Now, after this, we have a whole bunch of bug fixes. So, firstly, this one's really funny. Fortify Mastery that is meant to reduce duration of ailments on you based upon the amount of fortification you've got. This was not applying to bleed and poison on you, but instead was affecting to bleed and poisons you inflicted on other enemies. This is one of those really esoteric things. Like, this is probably affecting fewer than 100 players, but it is one of those things that would be very nasty if you were one of those people. Fix a bug where Replica Dragonfang's Flight could generate with a blank gem entry. They were attempting to grant +3 levels to Null Gem, thereby doing nothing. They instead grant Kinetic Fusillade. Fixed a bug where the experience progression of Kinetic Rain and Kinetic Rain of Impact was incorrectly set to that of a gem starting at required level 12 and not 28. So this means that if you are leveling one of these on an established character, it is now going to take slightly longer to get them to a usable level. If you are leveling one of these on a leveling character, you will still likely be constrained by character level. So it's not going to have any impact there. Basically, this is only going to come up if you are leveling a gem on someone that's already established there. Now, people are reporting in chat that Titanic Scarab of Legends and Scarabs from Uniques and Rogue Exiles is really dropping a lot of Scarabs at the moment. So that's something to potentially experiment with. If you're interested, that's being reported over on YouTube. It's one of those things where I'm trying to navigate two different things there. Now, fix a bug where using currency in maps such as in Strongboxes and Essences could use currency from your map device rucksack. Talked about this as the very first thing here. This was a quality of life improvement that was not tested. That's the way that I'm reading this. This is something that was a bug. It was a bug players liked because it was a quality of life improvement, but the Grinding Gear Games didn't intend it to be there because they hadn't tested that it was working reliably. So that's the reason that they've made this change. I hope it comes back, but I hope it comes back when it's tested. There were some known bugs with it that were not really exploity, but were a bit annoying. This is the sort of thing, though, that could create an exploit because it is changing the way that it's changing the way that currency spending works, and anything that changes the way currency spending works is just inherently really, really dangerous here. Most notably, I think the reason they might have done this is, well, at least the reason that this problem came up in the first place is I think they just copied the mechanics from the rucksack from 3.23, the code from that. But the reason I think this might have been a real problem is if someone had found a way to abuse the using Varlorbs from there onto Essence monsters. If there was a way to manipulate the way that worked, that would be the reason they had to do it. Anyways, that one has been changed. Omen of Amelioration and Bequeathal no longer consumed on death in situations where you would not lose XP for dying. That is a big improvement. Fix a bug where effects from the player that converted monster physical damage to an element were also increasing the amount of damage from that element based upon the percentage of physical damage converted and the monster's level. This would have affected Elementalist Shaper of Flames passive, Pyroshock Clasp Unique Belt, Calm's Binding Unique Belt. These items, and in the case of Shaper of Flames, the passive, these were much worse than intended. They are now working as intended. So, Elementalists that are using Shaper of Flames, you will now be much less squishy than you were before. This was something that was kind of a really weird situation. I don't know exactly what was going on there, but they were definitely doing more damage. After this, we have something extremely, extremely, extremely interesting. I always thought it was completely intended that the Enslaver and Nashta the Usurper had absolutely and utterly devastating ignites on them. Apparently, it wasn't. They were dealing 2 to 3 times the damage they're supposed to do. This might mean that Nashta is no longer the hardest hitting, I think maybe actually the hardest hitting boss in the game. Nashta's Telegraph Slam is the wrong term for it, but Nashta's Telegraph to get out of the way of this attack, I think it actually hit harder than any of the Uber Pinnacle boss slams. it just did ridiculous damage. It was so unsurvivable, but that may have been unintended. Anyways, the Enslaver, Nashta being nerfed from mid-tier difficulty to easy, and Sasan and Vic Vox being nerfed from easy to trivial with this. That's my interpretation of where that's going to end up there. And Zizrin ripped to Sasan today, did he? Oh, well, that's possibly one of the reasons there. It's kind of funny. See, I'm in Australia, and people are saying, like, calling her Susan, as in Susan. Like, there's a politician here, a leader of our opposition, so I guess you would say the equivalent of, like, Kamala Harris in the United States, that her name is Susan Lay, and she's got this really weird spelling of it. So all of the chat that's happening in over on Twitch at the moment, talking about this and using weird spellings, it's like I immediately thought that was a commentary on Australian politics. Anyways, yeah, Enslaver was definitely very dangerous without Ignite immunity. It was very telegraphed, though. I always felt like the Enslaver was one of those bosses where if you didn't have Ignite immunity, you would always win if you were very careful. But if you were reckless even once, then you went splat. It's kind of like fighting the Shaper when you don't have enough damage to insta-phase him, and you also don't have enough defenses to survive a slam. You've got to be really, really careful, but you can easily manage the fight. Fix a bug where Leap Slam was unable to trigger graph skills that required the player to attack to trigger them. Ouch. Well, that's a big improvement there, because Leap Slam, there are a couple of builds that use Leap Slam as their primary damage skill. Incarnation of Dread was being stunned sometimes during the fire circle, and this was bricking the fight somewhat. Will leave an invisible damage over time effect. The Incarnation of Dread is no longer stunnable while performing this skill. This comes up a lot because one of the popular grafts that you can attach, one of the Ul grafts, does devastating damage and stuns. And this is something that I've been using a lot. And like, you just find the incidental stuns on bosses is so good. Glacial Shield Swipe was losing bonuses to melee damage while you were using a wand in the main hand. Lots of these cool things where there's bugs that, like, a bunch of things come together. Although, come to think of it, the Maven Wand is actually really good in conjunction with Glacial Shield Swipe, I think. I think it's base physical damage fully converted to cold. I'll have to check that. Glacial Shield Swipe. Glacial Shield Swipe. Glacial Shield Swipe. Is that, or does it just deal inherently cold damage? And it is physical damage that is then entirely converted to cold. So yeah, the Maven Wand is actually a really good way to scale that, I believe. And that's that one's interesting. Now, Kinetic Fusillade is getting some important fixes. Firstly, it was always working in conjunction with Totems and Sacred Wisps, but this was not visible. And I actually had removed Sacred Wisps from my setup because I was just finding it was, it felt like it was doing nothing. It was doing something, it just felt like it was doing nothing. And also, visual effects are spawning at the incorrect height on some terrain is being fixed. After this, there's a number of other little bug fixes that are taking place, all of which are pretty minor. Visual bug with Penance Brand that would leave behind brands on enemies that did nothing. Bloodlines Ascendancy notables, which granted skills, did not grant the skills in Ruthless. Fix a bug where vendors unrelated to async trade were showing a different price warning. So if you were talking to Kirak, if you went to Kirak and you bought something for Chance Orbs, then you went to buy something with Alchemy Orbs, you would get a warning, hey, Kirak is trying to landmine you in trade. For those of you that weren't familiar, landmining is something that I actually predicted would be a problem in Path of Exile 2. I did a video talking about it when POE 2 announced async trade. I went through the various ways that people would... bad faith traders would end up doing a bunch of things, and the way that landmining worked was that you would put a whole stash tab. Let's say that the fair price for a fortress map was 44 chaos. You'd put a whole bunch of them up at 44 and 43 chaos, and one of them in there would be 43 divines. And the idea was that someone would just go yoink, 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 and not even realize that they'd just bought one that was way more expensive than it should be. Anyway, Grenadier Games made a patch to that last week, and then this has now been fixed. You can no longer do this, or at least you can do it, but you get the buyer will get a warning. But this is also affecting Kirak, which was really quite funny. Fix a bug where the collection icon above Faustus would remain visible when it shouldn't. Thank God for that. That was really, really annoying me. And a number of other little changes. Fix the map device window occasionally showing occasionally when killing a boss in a memory line map. That was that happened to me a couple of times and was annoying. And the chess pieces from the Chronomancer support pack could not be accredited to your guild. That's finally being fixed. That's probably actually the most useful thing that you could do with those things. Anyways, 2 instance crashes fixed. That is the patch notes here. So that's the key thing. The landmining question that's come up is that what happens if one item is 44 chaos and one is 444 chaos? If the item you ported to the zone for is 44 chaos, then you'll get a warning for any purchase price that is not exactly 44 chaos. So it seems like we're getting a bunch of mixed reports about Foulborn uniques. I might just have a quick look before we close this down. POE apparently has the Foulborn uniques. I'm just going to have a look and see if we've got all of the... if I can find those over there, and then we'll have a quick look, see if there's anything that's... if there is a clear link somewhere to everything. And then once I've done that, I'll... Foulborn, acronym. Here we go. We got a whole bunch of new Foulborn unique items. Let's have a quick chat through some of these, but I'm just going to keep this stream going a short period of time, go through some of these that I think all of these may be new. And then after that, we'll go through the most significant one, definitely Foulborn Mageblood. So we have the Ardalex. The annoying thing here is just trying to work out exactly what's been removed. Hopefully the POE wiki people will change this in the future. So I think this is saying that you lose the life and you instead gain Eldritch Battery. That's my interpretation of what they've got here, but I could potentially be wrong on this. So Eldritch Battery is something, it's very good to get it in weird spots. This is something that will definitely see some use there. Yeah, so life is not very... life is actually somewhat important if you're using Eldritch Battery, but a new option for getting Eldritch Battery in a new place is always something to keep in mind. Gain a power charge every second if you haven't lost power charges recently is intrinsically strong, but does not fit very well with Vol's Devotion, which is really interesting. Vol's Devotion is quite rare, so do keep that one in mind. Vol's Devotion is very, very, very strong. This is just strictly better. If it's losing 30% reduced duration, you're usually going to be spending power charges somehow. So let's think of the cadence of this. If you can increase the duration of your endurance charges, I feel like this is, which you can do, like there's the charge mastery for one. I feel like this is actually quite strong. You just go with Vol's Devotion, you just use this as it is and occasionally spend power charges on something. And I think you'll get you'll like be at full power charges a lot. I don't think I want to spend my entire amulet slot on this, but it definitely does something here. And then we have the interesting one is that you can lose all power charges on reaching maximum power charges. Most items that would be terrible, but here that's actually doing something real. After this we have Warp Timepiece, which is losing the movement speed in exchange for more temporal chains effect. This is definitely a patch in which Warp Timepiece is good, because reduced skill effect duration is an important stat to get for Kinetic Fusillade builds. And also, debuffs on you expire faster is good for certain things. Very, very solid. Zoph's Heart is being reimagined as something that allows you to debilitate enemies instead. Debilitation is 10% less damage, 20% less movement speed. This one's significant. Zoph's Heart, we already had the fire damage version, physical damage taken as fire. So it looks like Zoph's Blood, it's just... I think the debilitation version may be new. Unless... What else? Unless these are... Oh, many of these were already in game. Okay, sorry all. Thanks. I had missed the Ardalex. So the updated ones are down the bottom. Are they, or are they scattered? We'll have a quick look through. It looks like the updated ones may be the ones that don't have the information as to what's being removed from them. That's what they're doing. Okay, that clarifies things. Okay. I hadn't seen the Ardalex. I must not have had that drop at all. Anyways, let's go through and have a quick look-see. So, Hinokora's Sight, increased light radius. This is amazing. Like, you're losing a mod for it, but oh wow, this is huge with the light radius stacking thing. This is amazing. Badge of the Brotherhood, not sure what's being removed, but 2% movement speed per frenzy charge is big. Defiance of Destiny's mana recovery. That's crazy. That is absolutely crazy. Like, how much can you make that work? So you can get 36% of unreserved mana. How much can you make your Mind Over Matter work at the moment? I think you can get an enormous amount of Mind Over Matter at the moment. So that's crazy. Astromentus, giving you an amount of chaos resistance, which I can only assume is replacing the fizz damage taken from hits. Soul Thirst, I've just got to see what that replaces, what drawback that is. Mage Blood has been found, so it's confirmed it is leftmost is just changed to rightmost. There's no meme version. It is just, we do the same thing as normal. It just looks a bit different. Sunblast lives or dies based upon what the other effects, like what the effects on it are. The Magnate is Flask Effect again. Just don't know what some of these mods are, what they're replacing, and that's a difficult thing to say just as to whether these are good or not. Impulse's Broken Heart gaining Purity of Lightning has no reservation. That's actually a live mod, unless it's replacing. Unless it's replacing the signature mod, in which case it's dead. I think it's probably replacing Unaffected by Shock, though. And Utula Tunga, the numbers are higher than was originally teased. This is still probably pretty bad, but it's definitely doing something. Solid. Chance to block attack damage instead of spell damage is unlucky. I'm assuming that's what it replaces. That's intriguing, but I think I prefer the base version. 1% chance to block spell damage per 50 strength. Okay, so you can potentially get both of those. Fourth Vow. 40% of non-chaos damage taken bypasses energy shield. I wonder what that's replacing. That is normally a bad mod, but it could be something that's really good. If you've got very solid split recovery, you could definitely use this. That's definitely the case. Yeah, people are saying in chat that I could potentially check these out on trade as well. You would find more that way, but I'm just going to have a quick look and then wind the stream up. I think that's my current plan. Death's Harp that's a very high number, about 67 to 83% of physical damage as extra chaos damage. Does this work in conjunction with Bloodthirst Support, I think it is? That's one of the things I keep in mind. If you're using a very, very bad weapon, Bloodthirst Support is something that can support... Yeah, it's just attack skills. It's not melee. So that's a build. Depending on the mod that's lost, this could be a build here. I want to see what's going on with this, but you're getting a lot of physical damage added as extra chaos in conjunction with that. Doomfletch getting level 25 Prismatic Burst is funny. Probably not very good, but intriguing. This page is... I'll put a link to it in... sorry, I just had a request from Aruka on YouTube to provide a link to this. So here is the link in question. That is the correct link for it, the direct one. And looking to see if there's anything that really jumps out. Oh, Meginlord's Vice is getting something cool. So 700 strength rec is crazy, but a big chance for triple damage. I think the glove slot is too good for anyone to use that, but it's really good anyway. Orsees is getting its rarity undoubtedly replaced by increased quantity of gold. Quantity of gold is extremely strong. It doesn't sound like it, but it is. And Heat Shiver is getting 50% of cold damage converted to fire damage. This is going to do some weird things. Like, most people don't want this, but this now enables new options for Eternity Shroud builds. You probably don't want this. I'm assuming this is replacing one of the real mods on it, but this has definitely got some effects that could work on it. Anything else that jumps out as really intriguing here? There's not a huge amount of extra things here. Abyssus. Abyssus is getting damage over time multiplier for bleeding. There is a fair bit of bleed support here, and where I'm thinking you would go with this is that you've also got the Foulborn version of Rigwald's Quills. So Abyssus is saying, I'm assuming, actually no, come to think of it, this probably replaces physical damage to attacks. If you've got a good Fizzbow, though, maybe there is something to use there. Lots of weird things going on. Bringer of Rain, Socket of Gems is supported by level 30 Sadism. No, that is terrible. And what else do we have? Rebuke of the Vaal, increased trap throwing speed on Rebuke of the Vaal instead of attack speed. This is good. This is legitimately good in conjunction with Blade Trap. Blade Trap was already a solid skill, and there's a couple of Triathlon gems that do that. So that does some cool stuff there. Having a look to see if there is anything else that's coming up here. I think Bleed Bow has got the support it needs in Rigwald's Quills. Like, this is the thing it needs. Whether this is enough is an open question. I don't think you want to play it as a gladiator anymore. I think you want to be somewhere else. I don't know what the solution is as to what to play, but there is definitely something there. Cold damage from hits taken as fire damage on Pyre. This is very, very good for the Uber Shaper, because Uber Shaper, I think his cold damage that he does penetrates 40% of cold res. So this is really, really good defensively, just narrowly against that boss. And what else do we have down here? We've got Martyr's Teaching. Oh, no, that's probably going to replace the existing critical mod on it, so not all that good. Dunkubiari was already teased. Maximum Energy Shield is increased by Chaos Resistance on Sappho's Frame. I do not like Sappho's Frames. You cannot block attack damage. But there is definitely some power here. If you're getting a whole chunk of extra Energy Shield, that could potentially be good. Damage can't be reflected on Aegis. Just got to know what that's replacing. That's, I mean, if it replaces the signature mod, it's dead. If it replaces anything else, it's potentially quite good. There is the Whispering Ice version, and chances are spell damage becoming area of effect isn't going to do it. I'm assuming that's what it is, so I don't think that's any good. Searing Touch can be +5 to the number of Searing Bond totems, but that's not enough. And we have Poet's Pen is now adding damage to spells instead of attacks with this weapon. And which could actually... What spells are there? What spells are there that become really good when they get a bunch of extra physical damage on them? That's something to think about there. Darkscorn is something that people are suggesting I check out. Darkscorn. I must have skipped over that if it was new. And then, there we are. Chance to gain Unholy Might on Critical Strike. So that's the physical damage converted to Chaos when you critically strike with it. Don't know what it's replacing. That's the problem with it. We'll have to find the details out on that. Anyway, it looks like there's a lot of interesting things that are coming here. And apparently the Sappho's Frame replaces the block chance. So Sappho's Frame is losing 20 to 30% chance to block spell damage, which you can cap out pretty easily anyway. That's big. That Sappho's is genuinely good. So we have a lot of really intriguing things here. I think it's just going to take a bit of time to figure out what ends up being the best here. But there's a lot of stuff to potentially work with. I'm pretty happy with what we're seeing here. In terms of overall key takeaways from the patch, I think what Grinding Gear Games are doing here is making it so that there's a number of new ways to juice at endgame. Things that haven't been good in the past, the exception of the last one. The last one's just for fun. But these are intended to make things that haven't previously been good work. We'll have to see how it feels loot-wise. As I've said, as I predicted before Asynchronous Trade came out, it was going to make existing loot feel worse, and I don't know how that's going to end up. Otherwise, the buffs that have been made to the breach encounters seem to be moderately significant, but not overwhelmingly so. So that's what we've got currently. Anyways, I'm not intending for this to be a prolonged stream, so I'm going to wind it up here. My plans are that I will firstly end the YouTube stream, and then I'm just going to have a look and see on Twitch if there's someone that I can quickly... No, actually, let's not go with the traditional raid approach because that's really hard to organize when multi-streaming. What I might do, I'm going to see if I can work out YouTube's live redirect. I'm going to see if I can work that out to my meta wrap-up. If I can't work that out, which I don't think I will be able to, then I'm going to, then I have a fallback plan, which I might just action that fallback plan first. That fallback plan is to link the meta wrap-up video so that if people want to have a look at that, you can. So let me do that first. I'll just go to my top builds so far video, grab that link, post that in here, and there it is on YouTube. Now I'm going to go do the same thing over on Twitch, and that's going to be tricky because I have my Twitch window in the wrong version of my... all this multi-streaming stuff is it is genuinely quite clunky and awkward. There's the YouTube video in question that I've just linked over on Twitch, just to see if we can make all of that work. People are reporting that there's a couple of items that are not working at the moment. Yeah, so that's interesting. This is the sort of thing that'll get patched. As I said, there's a chance things will be really bricked. We'll see what's going to happen. Elva temples are bricked at the moment. It seems like that's coming from Drunk EMT. He'll know what he's talking about. But yeah, Elva temples seem like they're broken at the moment. But all right, I'm going to wind it up at this point. I've put in a link to that video if you haven't already seen it. That's a bit of a wrap up of the meta. May your Valobs have interesting results. If you're sticking around on Twitch, I'm sure you can find someone else that is streaming in this category at the moment. Unfortunately, I have some IRL things I need to get done today, so I'm going to need to drop off for now. May your Valobs have